My name is Krzysztof Sroka. I work for Callstack, and I would like to talk about platform channels. And what are platform channels, we'll say in a minute, but first we'll start with a simple question: what's a problem? One of the first questions that occur when people start learning about Flutter is, well, Dart is a new language, Flutter is a new SDK. Does it really support everything, or what if there's something that I know from Android or iOS that's not there on Flutter and not written in Dart? Can I even do that? Like, what's about my native APIs? All the nice code I've written in the past years. Platform channels are a solution to this problem. They are basically two-way communication channels that are able to transfer messages, and this is how we solve the problem of actually something not being implemented in Dart or in Flutter, is that we write some new native code and we connect that to Dart. First, some disappointments. We are not going to talk about a couple of other things. Plugins, which are basically packages prepared by people with these platform channels or any other methods to actually integrate your code with native APIs. So not about this. I'm not gonna talk a lot about how to write code in Android or iOS, because that's not the point of this. So we are not going to develop the logic for a code in iOS or Android. Just write minimal amount of code that we need to support what we want to do, and the rest will be done on the Flutter side. I am not an iOS developer, and I won't speak about iOS. So all of the examples here will be in either Kotlin or Java. And you need to deal with that, sorry. And I'm not gonna talk about event channels. So this is a bit more advanced topic that builds upon the platform channels, and the event channels are used for streaming between platforms and the Flutter side. So the platform channels we are going to talk about are basically, let's say, synchronous communication between two languages or more languages. Event channels are a tool to do actually streaming of messages between the two platforms. Although you could imitate streaming by just polling and pushing over time, it's not the best, especially if you consider video or something like that. We'll start with the foundation of what are platform channels. So platform channels are not that complicated, but there are things even less complicated than that. The simplest thing we can do to actually write or communicate between Flutter and our native APIs is to talk in binary. So we have a simple write buffer. We can put some raw data in there that's supported, and then we send that message to somewhere. We send that message through binary messages, which is a utility class with some label foo. And on the other side, this will be in Kotlin, we actually set up a message handler that listens to foo messages, and we take these messages and actually reply with something. So here we just take, we have a message ordered some way. We know there's a double and an integer inside. So hey, I'm just gonna say, I'm gonna log that there's a message with a double and an integer. One thing, the last line of code here is reply. So in all the examples I'm going to talk about, there is going to be a reply. So in all these communication channels, there's always a reply coming back to the origin of the message. Sometimes the reply might be null, and that's fine. The reply might be ignored by the sender, and that's fine, but there always needs to be one. In this case, we just do a simple message handling like this. Step up, we have something called message channels, which are which combine what we've had before, this message handling, with a codec. So a codec is basically an encoding for the data we want to pass. Sometimes we want to pass something more structured than just plain ints, be it strings. And in this example, we'll just do basically the same, just sending strings and with some codec that can encode these strings. And there is a counterpart codec, of course, implemented in native platforms. And here, we similarly set message handler. We establish a channel, basic message channel, in some Flutter view, which is in Android basically a host of our application, and root activity knows of this Flutter view with the name foo and instance of a string codec. These codecs on both native platforms and on the Dart side are implemented synchronously, so you don't need to actually worry that, hey, my native side is going to be out of sync from the Dart side, and what's going to happen then if somebody upgrades the codec and the other side doesn't. So they are always packaged together and sent out together, so they're always compatible, unless somebody messes up, but we hope they don't. And in this case, we simply receive a string rather than a block of ints or some other binary data, and we can actually, using this codec, do a simple reply as well with a string. Hey. Okay, these two things are like a foundation, and you could see like they don't really add much. And another thing, platform channels don't add much above this, but they are the most convenient tool to use. And to show that, I have some code because I find actually boring to do things like on slides. Let's make cursor. Okay, I'll do this and I'll show something else. I'll share my Android with you virtually. So let's make some use of these platform channels. I decided to write a small app to actually show how these work. I think I'll need a volunteer, but that's later. Okay. That's the beginning of my application. It doesn't have a lot. That's the main dot file. That's the root of my application. That's the only widget I have. And this application basically shows this nice dude here. Hey. It also gets applied some transformation with offset. Oh, this is a stateful widget, so there's an offset initially set to 0, but I have a nice function refresh which sets offset of 100, 100. And this method is tied to the floating action button. Hey, so it will just move the dude a little bit. Oh, of course I need to do it on my phone. And it's very stupid. So one thing I didn't say, but I'll say in a moment, and I show in a moment, is that platform channels are two-way interfaces. And all of the previous message channels and binary messages, have both ways of can be applied both ways. It doesn't mean that you have only a choice of sending things from Flutter to your native site. You can also initiate the communication from the native site to Flutter. And the interfaces are very similar. I'll show how it happens, but I didn't show it on slides because it's basically just swapping two languages and using the same APIs. So that's my first version. So I moved to the second version that I wrote for actually doing something. Hey. Okay. I hope everybody sees that, because I don't know how people. You back, Adam? No. Ta-da. Demands. No, I'll keep the terminal. I like it. There's a pizza for you. Okay, that's something irrelevant. So these are the changes I've made, so that you can see. What I wanted to show is that this can actually operate and communicate with some sensors that I have on device. For now it doesn't do a thing, but in a moment it will. I'll actually do it like this. Thank you. Yeah. And it will launch on my device. You'll see that later what it does. But now we will see in the code, and maybe people can guess. First thing is that I use this single ticket provider state mixin, which sounds scary, but it basically allows me to synchronize with the frame rate of a device. Without it, I wouldn't be able to actually do a nice animation. And there's a ticker that ticks every 60 milliseconds. Okay, 16 milliseconds. And I establish a platform or a method channel with that name. This is my domain / sensors. This is very important, because if we mess this up on the other side, we will not be able to communicate. And there's going to be accelerometer. What this does? Okay. So in the initial method, in its state, I create a ticker that is going to refresh accelerometer every time it ticks. The duration argument is unnecessary. It just tells me how much time elapsed since the last time it ticked. So I could check that, but I don't want to. I also add the dispose method, because if I use this mixin and if I use any ticker thing, I need to dispose it separately, but that doesn't matter. Okay. And what I do on every tick, I invoke a list method. It's a special kind of method that receives a list of results rather than a single result. And I call it getGravity. Later when I receive this, this is a synchronous method. So it's async over here and await over here. If you wrote modern JavaScript, you know how it looks like. Other modern languages also have this. And then I execute a set state when I say, well, just move these, change this offset in a state by whatever x is now, plus from result first item times 5, and the y, the vertical offset expanded by 5 times the result 1. And if something wrong happened, just print. Nothing wrong happens. But just debug me, hey, failed to get acceleration reading because something messed up. Let's hope it doesn't happen. It should be visible here if it does. Okay. Oh, and instead of doing how I did before, like this, set this dude to just be offset by 100, when I press the floating action button, we'll just reset to 0. So that's the dark side. It contains some code that does interesting things, like moving the dude array. Now there's other code as well. Okay, there is now Java code. So as I said, I'm not an iOS developer. I used to write Java, and it's very natural to me. I'm sorry, because I should have learned Kotlin, but I haven't. So we were gonna use a gravity sensor on Android, which is basically a nice sensor that tells me what's the gravity like. And it tells me what's the gravity like in 3 dimensions. X and Y are dimensions are like perpendicular to, no, orthogonal, no. What do you call no orthogonal? In the same way, in the same surface that the phone is, and the Z dimension, which I'm not gonna use, is basically away from a screen up. So yeah, there's some sensor. And I use some Java Android calls, get system service, and I get a default sensor for gravity, and I establish a method channel. I say, well, get this Flutter view. We are in Flutter activity, which provides get Flutter view. That's great. We call this channel the same way we've done previously. Actually, it doesn't matter what I call it, but it's convenient to actually call it like whatever your domain is or package name is in the beginning / something else. So I did it like that. And I have this sensor handler that I'm just going to show in a moment that actually does some more processing. And the sensor handler. Oh, okay. So this method basically receives data from a sensor. The gravity sensor just fires all the time, even if nothing changed in the gravity or its readings. It's gonna fire all the time, and we are going to override this our table of event values. Like that. We have it defined as a table of sizes of 3. And I know for these sensor events, we are gonna have 3 values, but why I do it in a dumb way, because I move things one by one, because these values are actually floats. These are doubles, and Flutter's default codec doesn't convert the floats to doubles. It just says, oh, I don't know how to do floats anymore, and I'm just gonna crash. So this is just a way for converting all of them to doubles, which is stupid, but works. Also, this is not a contest of code quality. So, and then if Dart calls a method, and the method is called getGravity, then I reply with result of these values that I last received, and otherwise I just get this standard result of not implemented, which should be read by the client and say, hey, this was not implemented on a server side or on a native side. I don't know what you're doing. And now it should run on my phone. So the dude is gone because the phone is always a little bit shifted. Actually, even if I put it, oh, you can see he runs around. I can reset him. And he's gonna float away from my screen, and so, oh. Yay. That's fun. You know? It's nice to have little projects that are fun at the same time. Okay, so that's the one thing. So the Dart, basically on every tick, the Dart side calls this method, getGravity, and it receives the latest data that was stored on Java side, and it just offsets this dude a little more. And you can see also, if you can see, this is quite smooth. He can run around. Oh, I lost him. It doesn't matter that I call, every 16 milliseconds this method. It's all compiled really low level, so the message handling is really quick. Okay, I'll just stop with dude now. But that's not everything. As I said, there are 2 ways to do things, so I did another thing, and now I need a volunteer. You will be a volunteer. You'll come in a minute when I see the code. Oh, actually, you can come right now. Come on, stand up. I need your phone. I'll just cancel this. Okay. Now check out properly. And come on, you can stand up. This is a choice of my applications for work. Air pollution, very important. The other one, so don't stop, nice game. We'll just wait until this thing finishes in a moment. What's there? There is. It's a little bit crazy to do on the phone, like all these small little things, but it works. You can actually play it. Oh. Okay. So I've added something. Actually, you might not be needed. Sorry. You didn't want to even, no? So I've added another sensor. And I've been telling guys here in the office, hey, try this out and tell me what the other sensor is. And they said like, oh, if I take it like here, maybe it's a proximity thing, or maybe it's about, if I say it's a vertical instead of horizontal. No, it's just light sensor, dummies. So if I cover the light sensor over here, it will be in a night mode. If I uncover it, it will automatically change to day mode. I don't know if it's... No, it's like in a day, I want a dark screen. If it's night, I want a flash screen. I don't know. I mean, your preferences might be whatever you want, I'm not a UX designer, right? I don't care what you call it. Now 2 modes, that's what's important. And let's see how did I do this. Oh my. I hope there's like a nice thing. Okay, this is a nice thing as well. Oh, I needed to change the ticker provider to, instead of single, to just ticker provider state mixin, which is more convenient because I can create lots of tickers, and in the previous one I could create just one. And I decided I would just animate the background color and foreground color with the help of this color controller. What it does, well, first we just start the color controller. We say, well, the duration of our animation should be 1 second. Then we say, hey, we have a background animation that should go. So this color controller will have ranges spanning from 0 to 1. And I say, well, do the color tween, which takes 2 values and interpolates on 0-1 scale what the actual values of colors should be, from white to black in background and from black to white in foreground. That's not very complicated. It could be written also better, but still, it's not a contest. And And here, actually, we say platform. I add a method call handler for a method call. The platform is the same as I defined previously, flutter.kpsroca.dev/something. If a method is on light level change, animate, this to the value either. What it does? This value is basically an integer from 0 to 100. It's not double from 0 to 1. So I just divide it by 100 and round to double. Because if I don't round to double, the code is not so smart to determine one integer is 1.0 double. It's like dumb. Or if there is actually, if it's not the method I want to handle, I just throw. And this is going to also go to the native side or the caller side and say, hey, this dude threw instead of returning something. Okay, I added some more dispose. And here there's a gravity. What did I remove over here? I don't even remember. Let's go down. Must be something new. I just merged the lines. This is stupid. This basically is just a linter saying, oh, you should do it some different way. And what I did just here is, it's a long line, but actually the only thing that changed is I added a color here, I added a color here, that's it. So the more interesting thing, but not but a lot, will be in the Java side. The light sensor is the new sensor, we just obtained it like the previous one. And we say, hey, there's a new handler. We need to pass a channel to that handler in a moment. I will show you why. And I add a new listener. So the point is also, why did I use a light sensor? Is that the light sensor is only invoked once in a while. The gravity sensor just runs all the time. The light sensor only gets invoked when the light reading changes. So it's a perfect candidate for pushing it, right? So maybe it doesn't change. Maybe my phone is in locker somewhere and it's always 0 light reading, and I shouldn't be like running all the time. So this is a nice candidate to actually do the communication from the other side, the native side. And the sensor handler. Well, okay, I needed to add a constructor argument because I need to use this channel thing. And now I have 2 sensors tied to one handler. And I need to actually determine, if it's the type light, then I'll just invoke a channel method, and that's where I need the channel to say on light level change. And there's actually, I convert this to double. There's a single value, but it's always an array, so I need to get that one. And that's it. So the nice dude runs around now. The code for this is actually available on my GitHub. I'll just show you later where to find it. And basically that's it. So I wanted to show you how this works. It can be done 2 ways. Of course, this can be as complicated as you wish. You can write a lot of native code and just forward the results to Dart side, just complete. And if you feel like, hey, your Dart side, your Flutter side is the one that should actually do the heavy lifting, you can just take whatever readings you need from a native side, transfer them to Dart. And as you could see, there's not a huge latency in terms of how fast these messages go. So this dude that runs around here, this icon, it runs around constantly at very quick rate, and it's very smooth. So there's no harm in doing it on that side. Also, this is done in actually the debug mode, so not ahead of time compiled. It's just in time compiled, which means not everything actually is compiled to the low-level code. Some code is still kept as that, and there's a VM running on my mobile right now, so it's even slower than a release one. And that's it. It's fast. Choice is yours. What do you want? But you can do it like that, and that's what I wanted to present. And the final thing, thanks. So if you want some more information from us, or you want to get in touch with respect to Flutter, email us at flutter@course.com. And I'm reachable on both on GitHub and Twitter as KP Sroka. Thank you. Now, any questions? No questions. Okay.
I have a question. So, how to pass another type of data? I mean, classes. Should I implement something like parser label? Or how is it done?
So you could do something like serializable. However, it doesn't really translate. So you would do that normally if you have two platforms with the same language, right? Because the VMs or whatever the structure of one class is in one language corresponds to the same thing on the other side. In this way, you don't.
One code base. If, for example, I want to use sensor for iOS and for Android, and you said that this is a different API for both platforms.
Hold on. You need to repeat that. I've been told I need to give you a mic.
Okay, so the first question was about something like parser label, and you answered me.
That was recorded, okay.
And the second question is, because you told that there is a different API for iOS and Android for sensors, for example, and in this case we will have two different code base?
Yes, you still need to write two different. I mean, this is also the power of the cross-platform, that if you want to do it, you do it in Dart once, but still there needs to be something added on either of the platforms. They are not identical. The APIs are not identical. And it's hard to convince Google and Apple to do like a single API for everything in a single language, because especially Apple will say, now we have Swift and Objective-C, why don't you use these? Yeah, well, and with web there will be another platform, I guess.
So I think that you should write some kind of adapter, yes? To adapt this, to combine these two platforms into Dart.
Need to keep it close.
Sorry, once again, sorry. So you have to write some kind of adapter, yes?
Yes, so some kind of conversion. I mean, you need to see what the APIs are. Are they different? And usually they will be different, and decide what's the common API that you would like to have on the Dart side. On the other hand, you might convert it on the Dart side, having, for example, two method calls, different, one for iOS, one for Android, and decide on that side I'll just convert the two of them into one beautiful unified API. But you need to actually write some adapter or apply some transformation to have these APIs in sync.
Okay, thank you.
I think like community writes some of these adapters.
Yeah, so you can actually find lots of these plugins. Plugins was the first thing I mentioned I'm not gonna cover, but they are basically packages with already written code for both Android and iOS that somebody else has written, and it's a library for you to use. So yeah, you can try. There's something called flutter.pub, which is basically an index of Flutter packages, and you can check if there's maybe a package with a plugin that you want to use, so you don't need to rewrite it. I don't know, probably there is already a package, or maybe it's even supported in Flutter core. this sensor that I showed you, but I wanted to show some code and have fun. Okay.
Is there a way of asynchronous communication between these messages, or it is always synchronical?
This is to some extent asynchronous, but the Dart code normally runs in a single thread. So you could see when I execute a call, I do the async, but still when I actually, there's one thread that executes things. So it just will queue the next responses and instead of having separate threads for all my responses. So I could send like 5 messages and say, and give me 5 different responses, but they'll be handled in single thread later on. So yeah, it is possible to do, of course, on a native side, multi-threaded evaluation. And I think it's possible on a Dart side to actually implement this, but it's not straightforward to implement multi-threading. And especially, I think there'll be a bottleneck of this message exchange. That might hurt you.
So this replay argument was used as like a fallback that like assures that.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's basically a convention they established that there's always a response.
And how do you get the message?
Get the mic.
How do you get the message from this binary message? Because you can get only them by value type? Because there's like the message.int.
The first thing I showed, yeah, you need to actually know what it's going to be. Yeah, so this is the most basic. You just throw bytes in another way, and the other way should actually know what the bytes are.
So this like .int is like 8 bytes. So you
get like 8 bytes and decide what these bytes are. So you need to actually be in sync in your code to understand. Hey, the first is going to be a double, then 2 integers, then 2 characters, and so on.
And this general question: are there any like observables in Dart? Because there is like this async await, and I think there's okay.
Yes, there is a package for this. I don't know if it's actually needed though. In terms of observables, there's a nice thing that's called Flutter actually implements something that's called inherited widgets. That basically is a context-like thing to pass on, and the observables could be implemented using that context, reading, subscribing to that and publishing, so a pub/sub kind of thing. There's also, as I said, observable package. I haven't used it, but you might give it a try.
It could work fine with this messages from.
Definitely.
There is Rx there.
Oh yeah, there's Rx Dart as well, so yeah, this will actually be more suited, I guess, to this button.
And there were also like on light level change. Is it like typo safe? I mean, if you missed the.
No, you need to actually copy it exactly. Yeah, sorry. There's a blog post that says sometimes uncomfortable things might be a challenge for you. So they are good for you. So if you see, hey, this isn't implemented right, or I don't have auto-generated the method names, and I need to make sure that all my strings are exactly the same. Well, go for it. You can write some preprocessor to actually do that magically. Okay, I guess that's it. So thank you again.